Captain Lisa Morgan sat perfectly straight in her chair as the massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a deep rumble. The sound echoed through the enormous space like thunder rolling across mountains. 6 months had passed since humanity received its invitation to join this ancient gathering of civilizations, and Lisa still felt small in this place. The chamber stretched upward for what seemed like miles, its walls carved from black stone that sparkled with tiny lights like captured stars. Representatives from dozens of worlds occupied seats arranged in a perfect circle around the speaking floor. Each species had evolved under different suns, breathed different air. Yet here they all gathered to make decisions that would shape the galaxy. Lisa smoothed down her dark blue uniform and checked her tablet one more time. Today's agenda looked routine enough. Trade route negotiations, resource allocation discussions, and a proposal about expanding mining rights in the Outer Rim systems. Nothing that should cause problems. She hoped Commander Jake Phillips shifted. In the seat beside her, his hand rested casually near his sidearm, a habit he had developed during their time on this station. Lisa noticed his dark eyes constantly scanning the room, cataloging exits and potential threats. Old soldiers never truly retired from their training. "You ready for this?" Jake whispered, his voice barely audible above the low hum of conversation. Filling the chamber, Lisa nodded and gave him her practiced diplomatic smile. "Always am." The truth was more complicated. These sessions drained her in ways that combat never had. Fighting enemies was simple. You identified threats, eliminated them, and moved on. Diplomacy required a different kind of warfare. One fought with words and patience instead of weapons and speed. High Counselor Valthera glided to the center of the speaking floor. The Schlanti leader looked like she was made of living light, her form shifting between solid matter and pure energy. When she spoke, her voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "The Council recognizes the trade proposals submitted by the Vorthok Empire," Valthara announced. Ambassador Zektar rose from his position across the chamber. The Vorthok stood nearly 8 feet tall, his scaled hide gleaming under the chamber lights. Razor-sharp teeth filled his mouth when he smiled, which he did often during these meetings. Lisa had learned that Vorthok smiles rarely meant friendship. "Honored Counselor Zektar began, his voice carrying the harsh accent of his people. The Vorthok Empire presents new terms for human participation in Outer Rim mining operations." Lisa felt her stomach tighten. They had negotiated these terms 3 weeks ago. The agreement was supposed to be final. Zektar activated a holographic display that filled the air above the speaking floor. Star charts appeared, showing dozens of systems highlighted in red. "Recent security concerns require additional restrictions on human vessel movements. For the safety of all species, we propose limiting human ships to these designated corridors." Proposed corridors were narrow strips that would add weeks to travel time between human colonies. Worse, they would cut off direct access to several mining worlds that humanity desperately needed. Lisa raised her hand and waited for recognition. "If I may, honored counselors, this represents a significant change from our previous agreement. Perhaps we could discuss modifications that address security concerns while maintaining reasonable access routes." Several representatives nodded approval at her polite response. Lisa had spent months learning the proper forms of address, the careful phrases that showed respect without showing weakness. Or at least, that was the theory. Zektar turned his cold yellow eyes toward her. "Captain Morgan, with respect, human vessels have been observed conducting suspicious activities in several systems. Our proposal ensures such incidents do not escalate." "Incidents," Jake muttered under his breath. Lisa kept her diplomatic smile in place. "Could the ambassador provide specific details about these incidents? We would be happy to investigate any concerns." "The details are sensitive," Zektar replied with a dismissive wave of his clawed hand. "Trust must be earned through compliance, not questions." A few other representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Even they seemed to recognize the circular logic of that statement. But no one spoke up to challenge it. The session continued for another 2 hours. Each proposal the Vorthok presented seemed designed to limit human expansion and influence. Restricted travel zones, reduced defensive capabilities for human colonies, requirements for Vorthok observers on all human exploration missions. Lisa agreed to each demand with the same polite smile. That seems reasonable. We appreciate the Empire's security concerns. Humanity is committed to peaceful cooperation. Jake's jaw muscles twitched every time she spoke. Lisa could feel his frustration building like pressure in a sealed container. But diplomatic protocol demanded patience, even when dealing with obvious attempts at domination. As the session drew toward its end, Zektar stood once more. Before we adjourn, I wish to address a broader concern about human integration into galactic society. Lisa felt ice form in her chest. This was not on the agenda. The human species, Zektar continued, his voice carrying across the silent chamber, displays concerning levels of ... softness. They say please and thank you like prey animals seeking to avoid conflict. In nature, apex predators do not beg. They take what they need through strength. Few representatives made uncomfortable sounds. Others leaned forward with interest. Perhaps, Zektar said, his smile revealing every one of his sharp teeth, humanity would benefit from learning proper hierarchy. Some species are meant to lead. Others are meant to follow. The chamber fell completely silent. Lisa felt every eye in the room focused on her, waiting to see how humanity would respond to this direct challenge. She stood slowly, smoothed her uniform again, and walked to the speaking floor. Boots clicked against the stone with perfect military precision. When she reached the center, she turned to face Zektar directly. "Ambassador," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "Thank you for sharing the Empire's perspective. Humanity values the wisdom of our fellow council members." She paused, her smile never wavering. "We look forward to continued cooperation and mutual understanding, Zektar." Eyes glittered with satisfaction. Around the chamber, other representatives exchanged glances that ranged from sympathetic to contemptuous. As Lisa returned to her seat, her personal communicator vibrated against her wrist. A message from General Pete Coleman on Earth, marked urgent. She glanced at it quickly, then felt her blood turn cold. Vorthok fleet movements detected near human space. Pattern suggests coordinated positioning. Lisa closed the message and looked up to find Zektar still watching her, his predator smile wider than ever. 3 weeks after the council session, Dr. Amy Rodriguez pressed her face against the porthole of Research Station Delta 7 and watched the stars. She had been studying alien plant samples for 6 months now, and the work fascinated her more each day. The galaxy held so many secrets, so many forms of life, that defied everything humans thought they knew about biology. The station floated in empty space between 2 star systems, positioned perfectly for studying cosmic radiation effects. On various specimens, 200 researchers from Earth worked aboard Delta 7, making discoveries that would change human understanding of life itself. Amy turned back to her microscope and adjusted the focus on a sample from Kepler 44b. The plant cells showed remarkable adaptation to radiation, something that could help human colonies survive on harsh worlds. She made notes on her tablet, excited to share the findings with her colleagues. Lieutenant Ben Hayes walked past her lab window, making his routine security patrol. Amy waved at him through the glass, and he gave her a thumbs up. Ben had served in the Earth Navy before volunteering for this assignment. He often joked that watching over scientists was easier than fighting pirates, though Amy suspected he missed the action sometimes. The communication system crackled to life throughout the station. "All personnel, this is Commander Walsh. We have 3 unidentified vessels approaching our position. They're broadcasting Vorthok identification codes and claiming routine patrol status." Amy looked up from her microscope. Vorthok ships rarely came this far into neutral space. The nearest Vorthok system was almost a full day's travel away. "Dr. Rodriguez, to the bridge, please," came another announcement. Amy made her way through the station's corridors. Other researchers who looked puzzled by the unusual activity. The bridge of Delta 7 was small compared to military ships, designed more for observation than combat. Commander Walsh stood at the central console, studying the tactical display. "What do you think, Doc?" Walsh asked, when Amy arrived. "Your xenobiology expertise might help us understand what they want." The display showed 3 Vorthok heavy cruisers in standard patrol formation. Something about their positioning seemed wrong to Amy. She had studied Vorthok behavior patterns as part of her research into alien cultures. "Their formation is aggressive," Amy said carefully. "Vorthok patrol ships usually travel in single file when conducting routine inspections. This looks more like an attack formation." Lieutenant Hayes joined them on the bridge, his expression serious. "Commander, they're demanding permission to board. They claim they need to inspect our research materials for security violations." "Security violations?" Walsh frowned. "We're in neutral space conducting authorized research. They have no jurisdiction here." The lead Vorthok ship moved closer, its weapons systems clearly visible through the bridge viewports. Amy felt her heart rate increase as she watched the massive vessel approach. "Commander Walsh," came a harsh voice over the communication system, "you will prepare for immediate boarding. Resistance will be considered an act of aggression against the Vorthok Empire." Walsh looked at his small crew. Delta 7 had no weapons beyond basic defensive shields. They were scientists and support staff, not soldiers. "Acknowledged," Walsh replied through gritted teeth. "Preparing Dock and Bay 2 for your arrival." Amy watched the Vorthok shuttles approach the station. Something was very wrong with this situation, but she could not identify exactly what. The aliens had legal authority to inspect ships in their territory, but Delta 7 was definitely in neutral space. The docking bay doors opened, and 30 Vorthok soldiers marched aboard the station. They wore full combat armor and carried heavy weapons. Amy had never seen such an aggressive boarding party for a routine inspection. The Vorthok commander was a tall female with scars across her scaled face. She looked around the docking bay with obvious contempt before speaking. "I am Commander Sekthera of the Vorthok Empire. This station is conducting illegal research activities that threaten galactic security." "What illegal activities?" Elector Rodriguez asked, stepping forward. "All our research has been approved by the Galactic Council." Sekthara turned her cold yellow eyes toward Amy. "Humans are developing biological weapons using alien specimens. This cannot be allowed to continue." Amy felt confused and frightened. "We're studying plant adaptation to radiation. There are no weapons being developed here." "Silence," Sekthara snapped. "You'll provide all research data immediately or face the consequences." Commander Walsh moved protectively in front of his crew. "This is a peaceful research station. We demand contact with the Galactic Council before surrendering any materials." Sekthara smiled, showing her razor-sharp teeth. "The Council will learn of your cooperation or your resistance after we complete our mission." The next few hours passed in a blur of fear and confusion. Vorthok soldiers spread throughout the station, downloading research data and herding the human crew into the main cafeteria. Amy found herself sitting between Lieutenant Hayes and a botanist named Dr. Kim, watching armed aliens ransack their life's work. "This is not a legal inspection," Hayes whispered to Amy. "Military doctrine says we should resist, but we're civilians." Amy nodded, her hand shaking. The Vorthok soldiers moved with purpose, as if they knew exactly what they were looking for. This was not a random security check. "Commander." Walsh managed to send one final message to Earth before the Vorthok cut all communications. Amy heard him speaking quietly into his personal communicator, reporting their situation and requesting immediate assistance. Then the lights went out. Emergency. Power kicked in a moment later, bathing everything in red light. Amy heard shouting from the corridors, followed by the sound of energy weapons firing. Lieutenant Hayes grabbed Amy's arm. "Stay down," he whispered urgently, but it was too late. The cafeteria doors burst open and Vorthok soldiers entered with weapons raised. Commander Sekthara walked behind them, her expression cold and calculating. "The human government will learn the cost of developing weapons in our territory," she announced to the terrified researchers. Amy wanted to scream that they were not developing weapons, that this was all a terrible mistake. But the look in Sekthara's eyes told her that the truth did not matter. The Vorthok had not come to investigate. They had come to send a message. Amy closed her eyes and thought about her family on Earth, hoping someone would tell them she had died doing what she loved. The last thing she heard was Lieutenant Hayes shouting her name. 2 days later, Captain Lisa Morgan received an urgent message while reviewing trade agreements in her quarters aboard Nexus Prime. The words on her screen made her blood freeze. Research. Station Delta 7 found destroyed. All 200 personnel confirmed dead. Vorthok ships detected in area before attack. Empire claims pirate activity responsible. Lisa stared at the message for a long time, her diplomatic smile finally faltering. When no one was watching? 3 weeks after the council session, Dr. Amy Rodriguez pressed her face against the porthole of Research Station Delta 7 and watched the stars. She had been studying alien plant samples for 6 months now, and the work fascinated her more each day. The galaxy held so many secrets, so many forms of life that defied everything humans thought they knew about biology. The station floated in empty space between 2 star systems, positioned perfectly for studying cosmic radiation effects on various specimens. 200 researchers from Earth worked aboard Delta 7, making discoveries that would change human understanding of life itself. Amy turned back to her microscope and adjusted the focus on a sample from Kepler 4b. The plant cells showed remarkable adaptation to radiation, something that could help human colonies survive on harsh worlds. She made notes on her tablet, excited to share the findings with her colleagues. Lieutenant Ben Hayes walked past her lab window, making his routine security patrol. Amy waved at him through the glass, and he gave her a thumbs up. Ben had served in the Earth Navy before volunteering for this assignment. He often joked that watching over scientists was easier than fighting pirates, though Amy suspected he missed the action sometimes. The communication system crackled to life throughout the station. All personnel, this is Commander Walsh. We have 3 unidentified vessels approaching our position. They're broadcasting Vorthok identification codes and claiming routine patrol status. Amy looked up from her microscope. Vorthok ships rarely came this far into neutral space. The nearest Vorthok system was almost a full day's travel away. Dr. Rodriguez, to the bridge, please, came another announcement. Amy made her way through the station's corridors, passing other researchers who looked puzzled by the unusual activity. The bridge of Delta 7 was small compared to military ships, designed more for observation than combat. Commander Walsh stood at the central console, studying the tactical display. "What do you think, Doc?" Walsh asked when Amy arrived. "Your xenobiology expertise might help us understand what they want." The display showed 3 Vorthok heavy cruisers in standard patrol formation. But something about their positioning seemed wrong to Amy. She had studied Vorthok behavior patterns as part of her research into alien cultures. "Their formation is aggressive," Amy said carefully. "Vorthok patrol ships usually travel in single file when conducting routine inspections. This looks more like an attack formation." Lieutenant Hayes joined them on the bridge, his expression serious. "Commander there, demanding permission to board. They claim they need to inspect our research materials for security violations." Security violations. Walsh frowned. "We're in neutral space, conducting authorized research. They have no jurisdiction here." The lead Vorthok ship moved closer, its weapon systems clearly visible through the bridge viewports. Amy felt her heart rate increase as she watched the massive vessel approach. "Commander Walsh," came a harsh voice over the communication system. "You will prepare for immediate boarding. Resistance will be considered an act of aggression against the Vorthok Empire." Walsh looked at his small crew. Delta 7 had no weapons beyond basic defensive shields. They were scientists and support staff, not soldiers, acknowledged. Walsh replied through gritted teeth. "Preparing Docking Bay 2 for your arrival." Amy watched the Vorthok shuttles approach the station. Something was very wrong with this situation, but she could not identify exactly what. The aliens had legal authority to inspect ships in their territory, but Delta 7 was definitely in neutral space. The docking bay doors opened, and 30 Vorthok soldiers marched aboard the station. They wore full combat armor and carried heavy weapons. Amy had never seen such an aggressive boarding party for a routine inspection. The Vorthok commander, was a tall female with scars across her scaled face. She looked around the docking bay, with obvious contempt before speaking. "I am Commander Secthera of the Vorthok Empire. This station is conducting illegal research activities that threaten galactic security." "What illegal activities?" Dr. Rodriguez asked, stepping forward. "All our research has been approved by the Galactic Council." Secthara turned her cold yellow eyes toward Amy. "Humans are developing biological weapons using alien specimens. This cannot be allowed to continue." Amy felt confused and frightened. "We're studying plant adaptation to radiation. There are no weapons being developed here." "Silence," Secthera snapped. "You will provide all research data immediately or face the consequences." Commander Walsh moved protectively in front of his crew. "This is a peaceful research station. We demand contact with the Galactic Council before surrendering any materials." Secthera smiled, showing her razor-sharp teeth. "The Council will learn of your cooperation or your resistance after we complete our mission." The next few hours passed in a blur of fear and confusion. Vorthok soldiers spread throughout the station, downloading research data and herding the human crew into the main cafeteria. Amy found herself sitting between Lieutenant Hayes and a botanist named Dr. Kim, watching armed aliens ransack their life's work. "This is not a legal inspection," Hayes whispered to Amy. "Military doctrine says we should resist, but we're civilians." Amy nodded, her hands shaking. The Vorthok soldiers moved with purpose, as if they knew exactly what they were looking for. "This was not a random security check, Commander." Walsh managed to send one final message to Earth before the Vorthok cut all communications. Amy heard him speaking quietly into his personal communicator, reporting their situation and requesting immediate assistance. Then the lights went out. Emergency. Power kicked in a moment later, bathing everything in red light. Amy heard shouting from the corridors, followed by the sound of energy weapons firing. Lieutenant Hayes grabbed Amy's arm. "Stay down," he whispered urgently, but it was too late. The cafeteria doors burst open, and Vorthok soldiers entered with weapons raised. Commander Secthera walked behind them, her expression cold and calculating. "The human government will learn the cost of developing weapons in our territory," she announced to the terrified researchers. Amy wanted to scream that they were not developing weapons, that this was all a terrible mistake. But the look in Secthara's eyes told her that the truth did not matter. The Vorthok had not come to investigate. They had come to send a message. Amy closed her eyes and thought about her family on Earth, hoping someone would tell them she had died doing what she loved. The last thing she heard was Lieutenant Hayes shouting her name, Captain Chris Bennett. Stood on the bridge of the USS Defiant, watching the civilian transport ship Harmony's Dream drift peacefully through space ahead of them. The massive vessel carried 800 passengers from Earth to the new colony world of Haven's Rest, families seeking new lives, children laughing in the observation decks, elderly couples finally taking the journey they had dreamed about. For decades, Bennett had escorted dozens of civilian transports during his career, but this mission felt different. Intelligence reports suggested increased Vorthok activity in this sector, though official channels claimed everything was normal. The death of the Delta 7 research team 3 weeks ago had everyone on edge. "Captain," called Lieutenant Tony Walsh from the communications station. "Harmony's Dream is requesting permission to increase speed. They want to reach Haven's Rest ahead of schedule." Bennett nodded. "Granted, tell them we'll match their acceleration." The transport ship belonged to a civilian contractor named Harrison. Shipping. Captain Maria Santos commanded the vessel with a crew of 50, most of them former military like Bennett himself. The passenger manifest included 200 children, making this one of the largest family transports in recent months. "Sir," called Ensign Davis from the sensor station, "I'm picking up 3 contacts approaching from the port side. They're broadcasting Vorthok identification codes." Bennett felt his stomach tighten. Distance and heading: 40,000 kilometers. In closing, you're on an intercept course with Harmony's Dream. The tactical display showed 3 Vorthok heavy cruisers moving in attack formation. Bennett had seen enough combat to recognize aggressive positioning when he saw it. "Communications open a channel to the Vorthok vessels." "Channel open, Captain." "Ships, this is Captain Bennett of the USS Defiant. Please state your intentions regarding the civilian transport in this area. The response came quickly, delivered in the harsh accent Bennett had come to associate with Vorthok authority figures. Human. Vessel, you are escorting a transport through restricted space. The ship will submit to immediate inspection or face the consequences of violating our security zone. Bennett checked his navigation display. According to all official charts, they were traveling through neutral space along an approved civilian corridor. Vorthok. Command. We are following established trade routes approved by the Galactic Council. This is not restricted space according to our current navigation data. Your data is incorrect, human. New security requirements have been established. The transport will prepare for boarding immediately. Delta 7 found destroyed. All 200 personnel confirmed dead. Vorthok ships detected in area before attack. Empire claims pirate activity responsible. Lisa stared at the message for a long time, her diplomatic smile finally faltering when no one was watching. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with quiet conversation as representatives took their seats for the emergency session. Captain Lisa Morgan sat in her usual place, hands folded neatly on her tablet. Wearing the same diplomatic smile she had maintained for 6 months, Commander Jake Phillips settled beside her, his dark eyes scanning the room with practiced alertness. Ambassador Zektar entered the chamber with obvious satisfaction, his scaled hide gleaming under the lights. He carried himself with the confidence of someone who believed he had achieved a significant victory. The other Vorthok representatives followed him, their predatory smiles matching their leader's mood. High Counselor Velthara glided to the center of the speaking floor, her ethereal form shimmering with contained energy. The Council recognizes this emergency session regarding recent incidents involving human civilian vessels. Lisa maintained her polite attention, though her personal communicator had been buzzing steadily for the past hour. Messages from Admiral Kate Sullivan, General Pete Coleman, and a dozen other military commanders flooded her device, all marked urgent, all waiting for her response. Zektar rose from his seat and moved to the speaking floor with theatrical ceremony. Honored counselors, the Vorthok Empire regrets the unfortunate incident involving the human transport vessel. However, we must address the broader security concerns that led to this tragedy. Lisa felt her jaw muscles tighten almost imperceptibly, calling the murder of 300 civilians, including 200 children, an unfortunate incident. Required impressive nerve. The humans, Zektar continued, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber, have been systematically violating our newly established security zones. When warned about these violations, they chose to ignore our legitimate concerns. The recent incident was a measured response to their continued aggression. Several council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Even species that typically supported Vorthok positions seemed troubled by the ambassador's casual dismissal of mass murder. Zektar activated a holographic display showing star charts with highlighted zones. These security areas are necessary to protect all galactic citizens from human expansion. The Empire has shown remarkable restraint in dealing with their provocations. Lisa raised her hand for recognition. Honored counselors, if I may address the ambassador's concerns. Velthara nodded. The council recognizes Captain Morgan. Lisa stood and walked to the speaking floor, her boots clicking against the stone with military precision. She moved with the same calm confidence she had displayed for months, but something in her posture had changed. Her shoulders were squared, her spine straight, as if she had stopped trying to appear smaller than she was. Ambassador Zektar, she began, her voice carrying the same polite tone as always. Humanity appreciates the Empire's security concerns. We understand that maintaining order across the galaxy requires difficult decisions. Zektar's smile widened. This was the response he expected from the soft humans, who said please and thank you like prey animals. However, Lisa continued, I believe there may be some confusion about the nature of recent events. She paused, her diplomatic smile never wavering. Commander Phillips noticed that she had stopped looking at her notes. For the first time in months, Captain Morgan was speaking without a script. The transport vessel Harmony's dream was traveling through neutral space, along an approved civilian corridor. The 800 passengers aboard that ship included 200 children ranging in age from 5 to 17 years old. The chamber fell silent. Lisa's voice remained calm and professional, but something in her tone made every representative lean forward with attention. Among the dead, we have identified 12-year-old Emma Collins from Detroit, who was killed for crying too loudly during the boarding process. Engineer Tony Walsh, a civilian contractor, died attempting to protect a group of children from execution. Captain Maria Santos was shot at her command station while trying to send a distress signal. Zektara's smile began to fade. Captain Morgan, you are being emotional about a necessary security action. Lisa turned to face him directly. Ambassador, I want to thank you for that clarification. The Empire considers the execution of crying children to be a necessary security action. That is very helpful information. A ripple of unease passed through the chamber. Lisa's words remained perfectly polite, but her meaning was becoming clear to everyone present. I also want to thank you for your earlier comment about humans being too soft, about apex predators not saying please and thank you. That insight has been extremely valuable to our strategic planning. Commander Phillips felt his communicator buzz with an incoming message. He glanced at the screen and saw Admiral Sullivan's name. The message was brief. Fleet assets in position, awaiting authorization. Captain Morgan interrupted Counselor Velthara. Perhaps we should focus on finding a diplomatic solution to these tensions. Lisa turned her attention to the High Counselor, her smile brightening. Of course, honored counselor, humanity has always preferred diplomatic solutions. We have been remarkably patient in our approach to galactic citizenship. She paused, looking around the chamber at the assembled representatives. We have said please when requesting fair treatment. We have said thank you when accepting unreasonable restrictions. We have apologized when others have wronged us. We have shown respect even when receiving none in return. The chamber was completely silent now. Every representative could sense that something fundamental was shifting in the balance of power. But Ambassador Zekdar has helped us understand that this approach has been misinterpreted. Our politeness has been seen as weakness. Our restraint has been mistaken for inability. Our peaceful nature has been confused with helplessness. Lisa's personal communicator buzzed again. She glanced at it briefly and saw a message from Admiral Sullivan. Lisa, they killed the children. The authorization codes you've been waiting for, they're active. All of them. Captain Morgan looked up from her device and spoke with the same polite tone she had used for months. I want to thank the Council for this educational experience. Humanity has learned important lessons about galactic civilization during our time here. Zekdar stepped forward aggressively. Captain, your emotional display is inappropriate for this forum. The Empire expects humans to accept their proper place in the galactic order. Lisa's smile never wavered. Ambassador, I believe you have misunderstood our position. We've never been seeking our place in your order. We've been deciding whether your order deserves a place in ours. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Commander Phillips began receiving rapid-fire communications from military units across human space. Status reports, confirmation codes, and readiness assessments flooded his screen. Captain Morgan Velthara said carefully, "What exactly are you saying?" Lisa turned to address the entire council. Honored counselors, I am saying that humanity has decided to adjust our diplomatic approach. We tried being the species you seem to want us to be. We have learned that some beings mistake kindness for weakness. She paused, her diplomatic smile taking on a different quality. We will not make that error again. Admiral Sullivan's voice crackled through the chamber's communication system. Captain Morgan, this is Admiral Sullivan. All fleet assets are in position and awaiting your authorization. Every representative in the chamber turned to stare at Lisa. The implications of military forces being positioned during a diplomatic session were clear to everyone, Captain. Morgan looked directly at Ambassador Zekdar. We have been operating under the assumption that you were civilized beings capable of reasonable discourse. This assumption has been corrected. She activated her personal communicator and spoke clearly into the device. Admiral Sullivan, this is Captain Morgan. You are authorized to proceed with Operation Reckoning. Execute all phases. The chamber erupted in shocked voices as the reality of the situation became clear. Lisa had not been negotiating from weakness. She had been giving civilization one last chance to prove itself worthy of respect. That chance had just expired. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching tactical displays that showed the true scope of human military presence across the galaxy. For 6 months, the galaxy had seen merchant vessels, research stations, and diplomatic missions. They had not seen the reality beneath that peaceful facade. Admiral, called Captain Ryan Foster, from his fighter squadron's command frequency, all strike wings are in position. We've been pretending to be cargo haulers for so long, I almost forgot what these ships could really do. Sullivan smiled grimly. Execute Phase 1, Captain. It's time to show them what human engineering looks like when we stop pretending to be harmless. Across the Vorthok Empire, what the aliens had assumed were human merchant vessels suddenly revealed their true nature. Bay doors opened to reveal fighter squadrons, defensive shields powered up to military-grade intensity. Weapon systems that had been carefully hidden behind false holes came online with deadly precision in the council chambers. Ambassador Zektar watched the tactical feeds with growing horror. This is impossible, he snarled. Human ships are civilian vessels. They have no military capability. Captain Lisa Morgan stood calmly at the speaking floor, her hands clasped behind her back in military posture. Ambassador, you made an error in your intelligence gathering. You assumed that because we appeared peaceful, we were defenseless. This was incorrect. The main display screen in the chamber flickered to life, showing real-time footage from across Vorthok space. Human forces that had been invisible for months were revealing themselves simultaneously. You see, Morgan continued in her pleasant diplomatic tone, humans have been studying your military doctrine for quite some time. We know how you fight. We know where your ships patrol. We know the location of every strategic asset in your empire. Captain Foster's voice came through the communication system clearly. Vorthok Heavy Cruiser Dominator. This is Captain Foster of the Human Defense Force. You participated in the massacre aboard Harmony's Dream. We are here to discuss your actions. The response from the Vorthok ship was predictably aggressive. Human vessel, you will withdraw immediately or face destruction. Foster's reply was calm and professional. Negative Dominator. You will surrender your vessel and prepare to answer for war crimes. This is your only warning. The Vorthok ship opened fire first, as humans had expected they would. Their heavy plasma cannons unleashed devastating energy that should have destroyed any human vessel in seconds. Instead, the human ship's shields absorbed the attack completely. Foster's fighter squadron emerged from concealment behind a nearby asteroid field, moving with precision that demonstrated months of preparation. Vorthok vessel, you fired first. We are now responding in kind. What followed was not a battle. It was a demonstration. The human fighters moved through the Vorthok formation like surgeons, targeting specific systems with weapons that seemed impossibly advanced. They disabled engines without destroying life support, eliminated weapons while leaving communication systems intact. In the council chamber, Ambassador Zektar watched his empire's most powerful warship reduced to helpless. Scrap in less than 10 minutes. How is this possible? He demanded. Human technology is inferior. Your ships are smaller and weaker than ours. Morgan's smile never wavered. Ambassador, you made another assumption. You believe that because our ships were smaller, they were less capable. You never considered that we might have been hiding our true technological level. Major Sandra Kim's voice joined the communication feed from a Vorthok military station. Vorthok Command Base 7. This is Major Kim of the Human Marine Corps. We are currently aboard your station. Your security forces have been neutralized. The image on the main screen showed human soldiers moving through Vorthok corridors with devastating efficiency. They wore armor that seemed to bend light around it, making them nearly invisible until they chose to reveal themselves. Wait, called one of the Vorthok commanders over the communication system. How did you get aboard? Our station? Our sensors showed no approaching vessels. Kim's reply was matter-of-fact. We've been aboard your station for 3 weeks. We arrived disguised as maintenance workers. Your security screening apparently needs improvement. Across Vorthok space, the pattern repeated itself. Human forces that had been positioned as civilians, contractors, and diplomatic personnel revealed their true nature simultaneously. Research stations became forward military bases.
House.
Merchant ships transformed into assault vessels. Diplomatic missions turned into command centers for coordinated strikes. "This is impossible," Zektar repeated, his voice rising with panic. "The Galactic Council has oversight of all military deployments. No species can position forces without detection." General Pete Coleman's voice came through the communication system from Earth. "Ambassador Zektar, allow me to clarify the situation. The Galactic Council has oversight of military deployments between Council member species. However, every human, civilian vessel, research station, and diplomatic mission has been staffed by military personnel operating under civilian cover." The implications of that statement sent shockwaves through the chamber. Every council member realized that humans had been conducting the largest military deception in galactic history for 6 months. "Your merchant ships, your research teams, your diplomatic staff," Coleman continued, "all of them have been gathering intelligence, positioning assets, and preparing for exactly this scenario." Captain Foster's squadron was broadcasting the names of every victim from Harmony's dream as they systematically dismantled Vorthok fleet assets. Emma Collins, age 12, executed for crying. Tony Walsh, civilian contractor, killed protecting children. Maria Santos, ship captain, murdered at her post. Each name was followed by the destruction of another Vorthok vessel. The attacks were precise, calculated, and absolutely devastating. Human forces showed mercy to crew members who surrendered immediately, but offered no quarter to ships that continued fighting. Morgan turned to address the entire council. "Honored counselors, we want you to understand something important. The question was never whether humanity could defeat the Vorthok Empire. We have had that capability from the moment we joined this council." She paused, looking directly at each representative. "The question was whether we should use that capability. We hoped that diplomacy and patience would prove sufficient. We were wrong." The tactical displays showed Vorthok resistance crumbling. Across 3 star systems, the ships were being captured or destroyed with mechanical precision. Their military bases were falling to forces that seemed to materialize from nowhere. "You kept pushing," Morgan continued, her voice remaining perfectly calm. "You mistook our restraint for weakness. You interpreted our politeness as submission. You saw our peaceful nature and assumed we were helpless prey." Admiral Sullivan's voice crackled through the chamber. "Vorthok High Command, this is Admiral Sullivan. Your military forces have been neutralized. Your government facilities are under our control. We are prepared to discuss terms for your surrender." The response from Vorthok High Command was desperate. "This is an illegal act of aggression. The Galactic Council will not allow this violation of sovereign territory." Morgan looked around the chamber at the other council members. "Honored counselors, I believe the ambassador raises an important point about sovereignty. Perhaps we should discuss what happens to species that commit genocide against council member civilians." Smile took on a different quality as she continued. "After all, we are still committed to following proper diplomatic procedures. We would hate to be considered uncivilized." The chamber fell completely silent, except for the steady stream of reports from human forces across Vorthok space. In less than 4 hours, an empire that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries was being systematically dismantled by forces they had never even seen coming. And through it all, Captain Lisa Morgan maintained the same polite diplomatic smile. She had warned for 6 months. The only difference was that now everyone understood what it really meant. 3 months after the fall of the Vorthok Empire, the Galactic Council chambers felt different to every representative who entered them. The same black stone walls sparkled with captured starlight, the same circular arrangement of seats surrounded the speaking floor. But the atmosphere had changed completely. Admiral Lisa Morgan sat in the human delegation's position, her new rank insignia gleaming on her dark blue uniform. The promotion had come with a simple explanation from Earth's government. Diplomacy required different skills when backed by demonstrated military power. Commander Jake Phillips remained at her side, though his role had expanded beyond simple security. Intelligence reports now flowed to him from across the galaxy, detailing the reactions of various species to humanity's new position in galactic politics. "Hi, Counselor Velthara," glided to the center of the speaking floor, her ethereal form seeming less confident than it had months earlier. The council recognizes the opening of this session. We welcome all representatives to discuss the new galactic accords proposed by humanity. The chamber was notably quieter than usual. Several seats that had belonged to Vorthok allies remained empty, their former occupants having requested extended leaves of absence to reconsider their diplomatic positions. Admiral Morgan rose and walked to the speaking floor with the same measured pace she had always used. But now, her military bearing was unmistakable, no longer hidden behind diplomatic courtesy. "Honored counselors," she began, her voice carrying the same polite tone as always. "Humanity wishes to present our framework for future galactic cooperation." She activated a holographic display that showed star charts covering the former Vorthok territory, where once the Empire had controlled dozens of systems through fear and aggression. New boundaries now marked independent worlds under human protection. "The former Vorthok Empire has been dissolved," Morgan announced matter-of-factly. 17 worlds have chosen independence and requested human security guarantees. 8 systems have elected to join human space directly. The remaining territories are being administered temporarily while their populations decide their future. Counselor Threx of the Montari Confederation raised a tentacled appendage for recognition. "Admiral Morgan, what authority did humanity have to dissolve a sovereign empire?" Morgan's smile brightened. "An excellent question, Counselor Threx. We acted under the same authority the Vorthok used when they executed 300 human civilians, including 200 children. The authority of superior force applied for moral purposes. The distinction was clear to everyone in the chamber. The Vorthok had used their power to terrorize and dominate. Humanity had used theirs to protect and liberate. President Dan Cooper's image appeared via hologram from Earth, his presence adding weight to the proceedings. "Honored counselors, I want to address concerns about humanity's actions and intentions." The Earth leader looked around the chamber, making eye contact with each representative. "For 6 months, we tried to be the species you seem to want us to be. We said please and thank you. We accepted unfair restrictions. We allowed ourselves to be pushed around in the name of peace." He paused, his expression becoming more serious. "We learned that some beings mistake kindness for weakness. We learned that some species view cooperation as submission. We learned that patience without strength is simply an invitation for abuse." Admiral Morgan nodded agreement with her president's words. "We discovered that our polite requests were being interpreted as begging. Our diplomatic courtesy was seen as evidence of inferiority. Our peaceful nature was assumed to indicate helplessness." The new Vorthok representative, one of the few survivors of their former leadership, spoke from his seat with obvious nervousness. "What do humans want from the remaining Vorthok population?" Morgan turned to face him directly, her diplomatic smile taking on the quality that had become familiar to everyone in the chamber. "The same thing we have always wanted, Representative Kethfer. Peace, cooperation, and mutual respect." She paused, letting the words sink in. "The difference is that now you understand the cost of refusing those simple requests." Representative Kethfer lowered his scaled head in acknowledgement. The surviving Vorthok had learned harsh lessons about the consequences of mistaking human politeness for human weakness. Counselor Velthara spoke carefully. "Admiral Morgan, how can the Council be certain that humanity will not abuse this demonstrated power? Because," Morgan replied without hesitation, "we have had this power from the beginning. We could have announced our true capabilities on the day we joined this council. We could have demanded submission instead of requesting cooperation. We chose differently." She gestured to the holographic display, showing the former Vorthok territories. "Look at what we have done with our victory. We freed enslaved populations instead of enslaving others. We granted independence instead of claiming territory. We protected the weak instead of exploiting them." President Cooper's hologram nodded. "Our actions speak to our character, counselors." He used overwhelming force to end a threat, then immediately began rebuilding and protecting rather than conquering and dominating. Admiral Sullivan's voice joined the conversation from the bridge of her flagship. "The human fleet remains deployed not as an occupying force, but as a protective one. We are defending 17 newly independent worlds from potential retaliation by Vorthok sympathizers. The reports from the liberated world supported her claims. Populations that had lived under Vorthok oppression for generations were experiencing freedom for the first time. Human forces provided security while allowing complete local self-governance. "We want to be clear about our position going forward," Morgan announced to the chamber. "Humanity remains committed to peaceful cooperation with all species who desire it. We will honor our agreements, respect sovereign territory, and follow diplomatic protocol." Her expression became more serious. "However, we will no longer tolerate aggression against human civilians or any innocent population. We will not accept unreasonable restrictions disguised as security measures. We will not pretend that predatory behavior deserves diplomatic consideration." Chamber remained completely silent as the implications of that statement settled over the assembled representatives. "Our politeness was never a sign of weakness," Morgan continued. "It was a warning. When humans say please, we are offering you the opportunity to do the right thing voluntarily. When we say thank you, we are acknowledging your choice to cooperate rather than be forced." She looked around the chamber, making eye contact with each representative. "But please understand, our manners are not a request for permission. They are a courtesy extended to fellow civilized beings. If you choose to mistake that courtesy for submission, you will learn the difference." President Cooper's hologram smiled warmly. "We hope that lesson will not be necessary for any other species. The galaxy is large enough for all of us to prosper together if we remember to treat each other with genuine respect." As the session concluded, representatives began filing out of the chamber with obvious relief. The new order was clear. Humanity would cooperate with those who chose cooperation, protect those who needed protection, and eliminate those who chose aggression. High Counselor Velthara approached Admiral Morgan as the chamber emptied. "Were you always this dangerous?" she asked quietly. Morgan's smile never wavered. "Counselor, we tried to tell you, said please and thank you and if you don't mind. But some species kept pushing, kept testing, kept assuming we were helpless." She gathered her materials and prepared to leave. "Did you think apex predators learn manners by accident? Ow. They are not a sign of weakness, Counselor. They are a warning that you are dealing with something that chooses to be civilized." Morgan paused at the chamber doors and looked back. "The choice remains yours. We can be your partners or your protectors, your allies or your teachers. We will never again be your victims." As the doors closed behind her, the chamber fell silent, except for the soft hum of machinery. The age of galactic politics through intimidation was over. The age of respect through strength had begun.